So today I want to talk about Donald Trump's ban on Muslims, as it's become to be called. So officially the policy is targeting 7 different countries around the world with largely Muslim populations, and their entry and exit to the US has been extremely hampered from now on, and they'll be subject to a lot more checks than they are used to and that anyone is used to. So as things stand right now, of course, many people are divided about the issue. There are currently lots of protests happening at airports within the US, and lots of demonstrations are planned all around the world, including here in London tomorrow, outside the US Embassy. And I think this policy is really a manifestation of some of the really backward views that a lot of people who supported Donald Trump and of course his team himself hold, that you can blame an entire religion, an entire population for the actions of a few. And he blames pragmatic reasons, he blames practical reasons for why this ban has to be put into place, just to keep Americans safer. But I think Kim Kardashian actually dealt with this issue really well in the tweet she posted, talking about how many acts of terror are actually carried out by Muslims entering the US, and the answer was 2 annually, on average. Whereas if you compare that to other domestic groups who pose a far larger problem, for example, people wielding guns, you don't see a similar outrage at gun rights or gun laws by Donald Trump. And I think this sort of imbalance really says something about the state of affairs for Muslims within the United States and also across the world. But what I will say about the international response is that, of course, there are millions of people on social media and out there on the streets making a point. But one thing I would want to say to our democratically elected rulers or MPs and politicians here in the United Kingdom is that this presidency is not like any other that we've seen. This is not a case of business as usual, using the same diplomatic terminology, the same sort of sitting on a fence. And I understand that Theresa May yesterday came out and said that the US refugee policy was their own. And of course that's empirically true, but what you'd expect the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to come out and say is something in strong terms against the principle of what Donald Trump is doing, which is essentially cordoning off a religion, calling it a political movement, and then chastising and marginalizing and discriminating against people who belong to that religion, whether they have anything to do with the problem or not. And of course, as it became more politically expedient to do something, Theresa May came out today and said to her Home Secretary Amber Rudd and also her Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson to go and have a phone call to their counterparts in the United States and have strong words with them. But what I will say is that this period of time in our history, these 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency, hopefully not 8, but these 4 years really present an opportunity, like I said in one of my previous videos, but it will also be a time in which we will look back upon and say, these are the people who resisted, these are the people who stood up to such tyrannical and despotic views. These are the people who resisted policies that picked on disenfranchised groups. And I really recommend, if any politicians have any sense of legacy or any sense of history, and I'm assuming you do, because you have to have an element of that to even get into the political process, if you have any sense of the arc of history bending towards justice or being on the right side, I really recommend you look at what's right by your conscience when dealing with this issue. So I know that it took Theresa May a day to come out and react to this, but hopefully in the future you'll allow your conscience to do the talking. And whether this trade deal is struck or whether that trade deal is struck post-Brexit will be inconsequential to your deliberations about this. And I think it's really key that you represent the Muslims who have a British passport, have lived here their entire lives, but for some reason may have links to other countries, whether they were born there, whether their parents were born there, and now will find it very difficult to live, travel, work, or study in America. And I think, as it says on the passport's inside cover, it's the Majesty's government's duty to look after these citizens, and I very much hope you take that responsibility to heart. And in the future, there is not such a delay for your conscience to decide which side to come down on. Because I can tell you straight up, a lot of the things that Donald Trump doesn't take a long time to decide on. And I think you should join the millions of people in responding in the right and appropriate way.